Thank you for tuning in to Stampscaping 101. This is a scene that I just stamped out on a ATC sized Stampbord tile. Stampbord is a hardboard panel that has a really smooth clay coating on it that's absorbent and takes all kinds of different media. And the killer application for me is that it allows one to work reverse marks into it. This is the Stampbord ATC 5-pack here. And the board starts off just white like this, and the kaolin clay accepts all kinds of different inks on there. And what I'm going to do in this video is stamp out my scene, ink it up with my dye-based inks, like I usually do, but in this case, on the Workable surface, I'm not too concerned about the retention of light, like I am in the glossy paper technique. And that's because I can go back in with tools like the fiber brush or the different types of scratch knives, or scraper tools as they call it, and to go back in and to add these different types of reversed marks in a subtractive process. And that's what we do here in this video, is go back in here and to kind of hand do all these almost kind of brushed or scraped marks into the blue ink to reveal lighter tones, or in some cases the white of the board again, by just simply the removing of applied ink. Which is different than just never putting that ink down, because let's see how close I can get in a close-up shot here. You can actually introduce kind of the mark of the blades back into there, kind of in a real textural and really kind of personal mark, in terms of the scratching process goes. So anyways, it's a real fun kind of process to do, doing those reverse marks like that. It's very relaxing as well, and just a fun way to use Stampbord with your stamped projects. Very simple composition, just 2 stamps, Snowy Creek and the Trito's just been used several different times in here, and you'll see how I add in that little star effect with the scratch process at the end. Just a simple mounting process in terms of my card formatting here. Just I like this, I don't know if it's really showing here, but this is a kind of a silver metallic paper. And I've double matted it here onto some light blue Star Dream iridescent paper. And overall, just kind of a nice little, I don't know, I guess it's more than an embellishment here, it's the focal point, but having that kind of raised piece on a card makes it kind of an extra special little touch in your card making process. So anyways, thanks again for tuning in, and I hope you like the project. Okay, let's see. Haven't done a Stampbord in a while, and I saw a scene on Pinterest recently. I've seen it before, but it was kind of timely, and it was a winter scene, and kind of inspired me, and I thought I'd break open a pack of Stampbord and kind of play around with it. I have a video on Stampbord, but if you haven't heard of it before, Stampbord is a hardboard panel, museum quality in terms of its archival quality, and it's coated with I believe it's called a kaolin clay. If you've heard of scratchboard before, it's kind of a similar coating as that. Stampbord is basically put out by Ampersand art, and Stampbord, in terms of their line of products, in larger incarnations, is called Clayboard. They always spell their board with a B-O-R-D, just for kind of a brand identity, I guess. But anyways, changing the Clayboard to Stampbord, just what they did was they made it in kind of a stamper's embellishment size configurations, so that it comes in like domino sizes and assorted kind of squares and rectangle packs, and this one happens to be in the ATC pack, as you can see. Okay, it's a smooth kaolin clay. It accepts just about any kind of wet media. You can use alcohol inks on it. It's really smooth, so it doesn't have any tooth to it, so it's not going to take things like chalks and pastels very well. There's different boards for that, but the smooth surface really makes it ideal for stamping on, because of it is so smooth, and it is absorbent too. It's clay, so it's not going to be like a porcelain tile or something like that, or something that you're going to put on your sink. Okay. But that clay is also it's a workable clay, meaning that we can go back into it like a scratchboard and do different types of effects in it with our scraper knives, or in this case I'm going to be using a fiber brush as well. But I'll get to that when I get to that. Okay. I'm going to stamp out the Snowy Brook. Is it Snowy Brook? My mind suddenly went blank and I can't remember this, the name of this stamp. Creek? Snowy Creek, is it? I'll put it down in the description section or annotation, but anyways, unmounted stamp, bare rubber, being used on the Tech and Peel temporary mounting system material. And, okay, let's see, let's figure out this composition. Do I want to go portrait or landscape? Okay, just because this is a landscape doesn't mean you have to always take in the landscape configuration. Sometimes when I have a surface that's smaller than the image, sometimes it's, and this is on board, so it's nice and stiff, okay? Sometimes I'll take it like this and I'll just stamp this way so I can really position it where I think I want my composition to go. I can really see that where that creek is by doing it this way. Okay, so just like a rubber stamp, I'm kind of stamping board into stamp, or surface into stamp in this situation. Just like a rubber stamp, get pressure over the whole thing, in the center especially. And on the perimeter. Okay, don't just hold it like this, because when you lift it up it might not be stamped in the center, okay? Alright, kind of did it off-center a little bit. Kind of a rule of thirds type of thing. Okay. And one of my comments, quotes for Ampersand art was, this is possibly, my quote was quite possibly the most beautiful stamping surface, just because there's something nice about this hardboard panel here. It's really stiff if you love papers and things like that. Their textures and everything like that. There's something to be said about something like this too, with its, I don't know, just the construction of it. It's like having a paper, but on the stiffest, you know, thickness and stiffness and thickest possible incarnation of it. And it's just so beautiful. It stamps out beautifully on here. Okay, now I'm making up this tree duo here, and I wanted to have these. This is going to be like a snowy scene, so I've wiped off a lot of the bottom, so it looks like the trees are kind of in snow. Now this creek, I didn't really intend for it to be something really large, like a river, okay? But just by changing my, you know, the size of these trees, I think by putting in some kind of smaller trees like this, just representationally, that creek will take on, I don't know, what am I trying to say here? The smaller the trees around it like that, in terms of size relationship, it will look by scale accordingly. So if I put these, unless these are like little tiny saplings or something like that, if we're saying that those are kind of full mature trees, then we're saying that this little creek is really quite large by relationship to those trees. Okay? So if I put some kind of like bush next to it over here, then what we're saying is that creek is much smaller, it's more intimate scene. So you can kind of handle it however way you want to. I can put some trees out here in the distance. Okay. It's like, how much forest do you want? This is one good thing about scenic stamping. I mean, rubber stamping, it's all about the, you know, the whole purpose of having a rubber stamp is it's for the repetition of form, okay? By rubber stamping, you know, you can replicate an image or a word or whatever it is on that stamp so many times, but in so many forms of rubber stamping, what you might be doing is you might be using a lot of different stamps, but you might use it once or something like that within a composition, especially word stamps, of course. You know, you might do a word stamp and, you know, a present, or, you know, happy birthday with a present next to it or something like that. But when it comes to landscape stamping, you know, there's so much repetition of form in scenery like trees and bushes and plants that you can put them several times in the course of one tiny composition like this, numerous times. And, you know, scenery is one, I don't know, what they might call a killer application of the form of rubber stamps. Okay, now I'm going to keep this composition pretty simple in terms of the color scheme, okay? Let's make this a winter, cool blue winter scene. I want to really do some different effects with the fiber brush and scratch knives. Okay. I'm not really going to be very concerned whatsoever. Well, I don't know about whatsoever, but I'm not going to be too concerned about the retention of light like I am on say, glossy cardstock, okay? Because this being a workable surface, I can go back in and regain lighter areas, okay? And I'll do so kind of in a very controlled form. It's kind of like drawing in reverse almost, when we're scratching away those types of highlights, okay? This was aqua, and looks like I had some black on here from my last instructional video. Let's try the memento. I need to move into my medium tone right here. And as far as the feel of Stampbord in comparison to the glossy cardstock, it's stiffer. I wouldn't say smoother, okay, but it is fairly smooth. I don't feel too much of a difference, okay, between this and the glossy cardstock. I mean, actually the stiffness of it, of course, but in terms of the surface, though, I would say it behaves fairly close to the glossy cardstock in terms of the absorbency of the ink. Even though this has a kind of a thick clay coating on here, I'm not talking real thick, but clay is an absorbent material, so glossy cardstock, they also put a clay surface, but it's just not nearly as thick. And of course, glossy cardstock, what you have is the clay, and then it's coated with a whatever gloss coating it is. You know, that makes the paper shiny. Okay, that was Memento Bahama Blue, kind of a medium tone blue. The composition is getting fairly dark here. Let's go into a number 3 Marvy Blue. The Denim Adirondack or something like that would be good. Anything kind of, you know, like a navy, royal type of blue. I would say that, I don't know, most people in your media repertoire, you know, whatever stamp pads you have, most people have something of a darker blue in their collection. A lot of people have medium blues and dark blues. Sometimes they don't have the lightest of blues, like a shadow stamping blue, which is the that aqua that was used, the Adirondack Lights aqua. But I love those light tones, like those types of pads. Okay, kind of going around on the perimeter and going into the water with this darker blue. I want my water. A lot of times I keep the water lighter in kind of a daytime scene, or, well, I guess even a nighttime scene too, but in this case I really want it to stand out in terms of where snow meets water, okay? So I have to kind of darken in some of that. Now, don't worry about this. I know it's getting very dark on here, but that's where the fun, for me, of Stampbord is. Alright, so that right there. Kind of not the lighting process of glossy cardstock at all. Okay, now I've laid down a lot of ink on here. It's fairly saturated in here, okay? It's easier to start working into this board if you have kind of a drier clay, okay? what I'm going to do is I'm going to start going in there and, in a sense, kind of sanding away some of that clay on there, scratching away at it. But right now the clay is wet, okay? So it's not going to give me that kind of powdery, you know, gradual removal of ink that I'm going to want when I start doing those types of effects. Same thing with the scratching in. I don't want to scratch into kind of a wet clay. I mean, it's not real wet to the touch, you know. I don't know, it's a little on my thumb. But you can see it's not just, you know, super damp. But even that being said, I've put a lot of ink down here, and I think I want to allow this to dry for a few minutes before I start scratching back into it, okay? So I'll give it probably 5 minutes, and oops, and I will be right back. Okay, I'm back, and I've given this tile, I call it a tile, this board, about 10 minutes to kind of set up a little bit. It's not going to be completely free of moisture, you know, because that clay has absorbed a lot of that water from the dye-based inks, but good enough. Okay. All right, now there's various tools that people use on Scratchboard. Okay, and now Stampbord and Clayboard, they're not necessarily made just to be a workable surface that you can scratch back into, okay? That you can add things to and remove from. People just use it just because it's a flat panel with a surface that's very accepting of, you know, multimedia, just about anything that doesn't require texture that you can put on here. It pretty much takes very well. But I like to add detail into my scenes, you know. From the videos, I use a lot of the gel pens to do highlights, and you know, some white pigment ink to go back in and add, you know, kind of a reverse light on dark type of look. And that's, I'm always building up, okay? But on this board here, just from the very nature of it being what it is, you can go back in and you can remove from it, okay? People have used sandpaper on Scratchboard before, knives, tools, X-Acto blades, etc. The tools that I like to use are more of the ones that are kind of designed to be used on Scratchboard. These ones happen to be by Speedball. That's the manufacturer that makes, you know, a lot of those different types of calligraphy nibs. This is just a standard calligraphy nib holder, okay? Now these tips right here are not calligraphy nibs. You know, they're not meant to be dipped in ink or something like that. One of them is more of a kind of a spear, and this one's more of like a, almost like a spoon, okay? This one's meant to be used on its side, and this one's, this tip here, is meant to be used on its tip there to give more of a uniform, very fine, consistent scratch line, okay? Okay, now this one right here has been designed by Ampersand Art. It's called the fiber brush, if I can get this to focus in. Okay, it's a fiber brush, and that little white thing in there are a bunch of tightly bound fiberglass fibers, okay? Now this is an older incarnation of the fiber brush. Now it comes in this other reddish kind of plastic barrel, but it has the same fiberglass configuration like this. They're all tightly bound like that. Now, the nature of fiberglass, they're very small, of course, and they're glass, so this kind of extends, this little twisting motion extends this out right here, but you don't want it to be extended very far, and that's the mistake a lot of people do when using this. This is like a little whisk brush or something like that. It's meant to kind of be just kind of rubbed on here, and it takes off, it removes just kind of a very thin layer of whatever you've laid down there. In this case, of course, it's ink. And in a sense, it feels like it's kind of, if I was to make an equivalent kind of reference point, it feels like it's sanding away wherever you're wiping it, but sanding it away with kind of a finer grit sandpaper, okay? And the more I whisk away, okay, the deeper I go into that clay. Now, I don't know if you can see that right there, but see that little powder right there? And what it's doing right here? It's just kind of a gradual process. Okay, now, the thing that I was mentioning about what people do sometimes is, let's say they do one little whisk like this. It's barely doing anything, right? Up here. It's just very subtle. You can see a little powder right there. Some people don't think it's happening fast enough. They do a couple whisks and it's like, wait a minute, there's nothing happening. So what they do is they extend this out, thinking it's going to whisk away faster or give you a different mark faster, but it doesn't. It extends these bristles out, and they're more prone to bending, right? Because they have more wiggle room. If you have it closer up, they're tighter, okay? And all the little fibers are more tightly bound, so it's going to give you this, stiffer action. But when the people kind of extend this out, it can splay like this, and then when they're rubbing it back and forth like that, what you get is these bristles breaking off because they're like, the width of, someone's hair. Okay? And I don't know if anyone's ever touched like a prickly pear cactus or something like that. The fruit of it, but you get these little tiny, little sticky things in your finger, and that's just like a little fiber brush. You don't want these little hair things to kind of get stuck in your finger. It's not painful, but it's kind of irritating, to kind of look at your finger and say, where is that little bristle? Okay? It used to happen a lot, whenever you're teaching a workshop or something like that, and you're kind of explaining the process in the beginning. Now there's a lot of things that people are taking in. A lot of times, when they get back to their seat and, a half hour into their scene, or, after they kind of figure out a composition that they want to go with, and adding all that ink, sometimes they forget about that, and, they do that thing with the fiberglass fiber brush, and, we used to get a lot of little hairs all over the place in a classroom under workstation. So anyways, don't do that at home. Just kind of work with it and gradually remove or whatever, texturize, highlight. It's kind of doing it all. Okay, now what I'm doing is, in terms of this scene, this composition right here, I'm kind of going along the banks of this kind of, I don't know if it's frozen, but the snowy bank right here, and just kind of reclaiming some of the the snow and the edge where kind of snow meets water, and you can see it's kind of slowly coming to life. We see the light kind of being reintroduced in there. Now this light and texture, this area along the banks, it's different in this kind of removal process, with this brush, than, say, in the glossy paper technique. If you're, what I'm getting at is some people might be thinking, well, wait a minute. If you're going into this scene now and reclaiming the light of the, the white of the board or the lighter areas of the board, then why not just not ink that in to begin with, just like we do on glossy paper? Well, if you look on here, you can see that the textures are just different if you go in and scratch away some of that ink, all right, than it would look if you just never did it to begin with. Okay, because it's taken on the nature of this tool right here. You can see there's fine little soft areas of ink removal. Okay, so imagine if you were kind of working with oil paints or something like that, and you were doing highlights with a light-colored white or something like that over the top of a darker composition. That's, I don't know, not the perfect analogy, but it's kind of, similar. This is a brush, so it's kind of going in there and putting brush marks into it. It's just not an additive process, it's a subtractive process. You're brushing away the ink. It's kind of an interesting thing too, now that I'm talking about it, because I seem to recall teaching classes where you have, groups of 15 or whatever, however many people might be in a workshop, and because of the nature of this kind of tool here, I always felt like the hand of the owner, of the artist, stamper, was displayed kind of more, just because, it's like handwriting. We all have kind of different motions and gestures, to our stroke, and this is kind of everyone's scenes, always tiles or Stampbord, everyone's tiles kind of looked a little bit different. It's almost like a kind of a process akin to, I don't know, like stamp I'm trying to think, it was just in my head. Meditation. It's a real kind of, I don't know, there's something meditative about this. This was the quietest class I ever taught. Not just because of the fiber brush, but when people got into this and just started working on it, it was just one of the quietest workshops you ever heard. There's something very relaxing about this too, about this process of either working with the scratchboard tools. Sometimes I've wondered if people were, when we do this kind of subtractive process like this, working the highlights as opposed to always kind of adding shadows or doing an additive process. Sometimes I've wondered if we're using a different part of our brain or something like that, or going deeper into the right brain, the creative side of our brain. Okay, now there's some rocks in the water as well that are snow covered. This isn't a great tool for that because they're such a detailed little area. Okay, but that's what we have these other tools for, kind of more specific areas. But you can see, the more I go into these some areas, the lighter it becomes, okay? Now, if I ever take off too much, and it's lighter than I want it to be, what can you do? All you need to do is just take some more ink and just go right back into it. If I go into it and I think, oh, I wish I had some darker areas, some more shadows, don't be afraid to go back and add those in, okay? It's not just, it's not a linear process of, you know, A to D or something like that, okay? You can always do something, you can add, you can go back and work some area, subtract, add more, subtract. And like I was talking about the thickness of this board, I don't really know how thick it is in terms of, you know, measurements. I don't know, a millimeter or two or something like that, but the density of the clay surface and the quality of it, you know, I'm never worried about scratching, especially with this tool, down to, you know, the hardboard panel. When I say hardboard too, it's not masonite, but that's what it's kind of like in terms of feel. Like I said, Ampersand, this is their, it's the same as their clay board, so it's a, you know, it's a museum quality archival panel. It has to be because, you know, Ampersand's main audience are artists and a lot of professional artists. So it has to be the highest quality possible. I mean, they have students using their work too, but, you know, there's a lot of pros doing that. And I think that those panels, they can order them just about any size. You can order them gigantic too. Okay, putting some little highlights back in the hills. Distance like that. Okay. Kind of real free-form, kind of organic feel to this. Remember I said I kind of made that little, you know, that creek, that water a little bit darker, and this is why. Okay, let's switch up a little bit. But here you can see this kind of, this powder. It's like dust, right? And it's that blue dust, it's that clay mixed with that ink. Okay, let's switch up a little bit here and go with, I'm going to go with the kind of rounded, kind of spoon-like scraper tool, and I'll be using it on its edge like this and scraping kind of back towards me like this, okay? Alright, kind of in that motion. I don't go back and forth like that, but like that, okay? And I'll work some of these mounds. I want to work the top edge of it a little bit more, okay, to capture more, to represent more kind of light. Top edge of this rock down here in the water. Now these scratch knives too, I'm trying to look for, see if I have my, oh. This is a sharpening stone for knives, and this is feeling kind of dull, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to just kind of run this down here, and try to keep it nice and flat. And try to get that. Don't press too hard, okay? You just need to kind of fine-tune, hone your your blade. Yeah, that feels much better. That little sharpening stone, I think I just got it at Walmart or something like that in the sporting goods section. Okay, let's kind of go back in here and illuminate some of the banks a little bit more. What I'm going for is kind of more contrast. In the scene, more contrast by kind of the introduction of lighter values. Now remember, this is the most, it's probably one of the most forgiving surfaces that you'll ever work on, because, like I said, if you remove too much, you can just kind of go back in and ink it up all over again. You can see it's kind of taken shape a little bit, right? The highlights don't always have to be right along the shore. Why don't we kind of put in a little area of light over in this area of the snow? Kind of odd. You notice how I have this, I know this is probably better if I work this way, just for the sake of the video, but my hand doesn't, go this way. My hand scrapes this way, so I'm turning this, just like I do with the stylus tools when I'm applying ink. So I can do that pull motion, okay? And I never have to worry about some kind of repetitive motion in terms of using kind of a bad ergonomic motion or angle, okay? If you're always kind of keeping your, the comfort, natural position of your hands, doing something. I mean, if I was doing this 24 hours a day, that might not be good, but, if I keep it like that, I don't really have to worry about anything. I don't suffer from kind of joint fatigue when I'm turning my pieces accordingly with the stroke that I'm going after. Okay, kind of taking off some more of this. I think I want to illuminate my foreground a little bit more. This is fun stuff, it's kind of fun watching these things kind of develop like this too. See, this area back in here is just light and it moves darker. Well, let's kind of do something back in here. Maybe making a little bit of a mound of snow right back in there, being nicely lit by the moonlight, I guess. If I want to, I guess I can kind of scratch back, a little moon in there or something like that. But I think what I see now, as a start, I wasn't planning on this, but let's illuminate this like the light is coming, like the moonlight's coming from this direction, okay? So I have these areas a little bit more lit, but let's kind of create that passage of light. Let's illuminate that kind of throughout here at that angle, okay? So it means just, can it keep scratching away here. I'm not talking about just doing it all to white or something like that. Let's illuminate some of the sides of those rocks, facing the light. It's kind of bringing them to life a little bit. Okay. See how it's starting to work? We have this kind of area going. I have these little rocks down here, kind of illuminated. I think in the foreground it can use a little bit more light. Yeah, coming around. Kind of always take a look at your pieces at arm's distance to kind of get a feel of the overall scene. Okay, let's bring some of this area to life a little bit more too. Why don't we put a little highlight, like some light is coming through those moon, you know, the trees. So that moonlight's coming through the trees. Put a dab of that down there. Okay. And let's pull these rocks out a little bit more. Okay, those rocks are out a little bit more. Sorry. There we go. Okay. Now, we've worked very kind of soft, a little bit more specific, you know, with that tool. Now let's work very specific with this sharp-edged one, okay? Alright, now, let's do something. Okay, we have all these little trees in there, and they're kind of looking like little smudgy little just shapes, okay? Let's see what we can do about... Alright. Let me try to get as tight as I can and try to remember to not just start working completely off screen here. Okay, let's imagine the lighting is coming from somewhere back. It would be over here somewhere, and light's coming down this way on the sides of the tree, facing that light. I'm gonna illuminate some of these trees on that side of the tree facing the light. Okay. Could also represent some snow on the tree limbs. And it just gives some dimension to the tree. They're not so flat that way if you kind of put, if you introduce some little highlights. Still scratching the same way, kind of pulling back towards me. It's like putting a little nick into the surface of the board or the image. The feeling of this too, I mean, in a sense, I'm kind of drawing. You know, I'm using my stamped imagery as a reference point, of course, because I'm scratching right on there, but it's kind of starting to take on the feel of being a drawing in a way because of all these kind of marks that I'm putting in. Okay, now let's say that the lighting is coming from somewhere in here, so on the side of the other side of the tree right here, I will put the highlights, okay? Maybe some of that, even that very distant tree, giving it a little dimension. Okay, so there's my trees. Some highlights as it looks kind of on the overall. Okay, now let's go and pull out kind of pulling out some other highlights on the banks, snowy banks. Okay. Let's go along these rocks. These rocks are looking really kind of soft now. So I'm going to go in and create kind of a harder edge. Kind of a harder edge and also a lighter highlight. I want some of these objects to have a little bit more pop individually. Okay. Kind of going along the top surfaces of these areas. Okay, there were a lot of kind of snowy rocks in the water there, but there's all these little kind of darker rocks. Oops, let me focus on those all darker rocks there too. Let's put some highlights on those ones as well. And kind of keep things fairly consistent. As far as highlighting goes. Okay, so there's all. Let's see if we can see that. Okay, see those little highlights on the tops of those rocks there. Kind of pulls them out a little bit more. Okay. Now, in this water right here, before I get to that water, I think let's bring it in some lighter areas, even more so. Kind of like I said, you know, if you kind of hold something at arm's distance and kind of take a look at the overall, sometimes it reveals, you know, kind of what we need to do, or what a scene is lacking, what a piece is lacking. Instead of always looking at it kind of up close. Alright, that looks better. Okay, but what I was getting at with the water here, let's add some more textures. Let's add some more kind of shimmery sparkle to it, okay? I've switched back to my kind of more spoon-like scratched knife. And let's add in some little specular light and texture. This isn't real sparkly yet, but I'll show you what I'll do. Using this on its side. If I scratch down a little bit, I'm kind of revealing kind of light blue. And if I scratch down more, I'm revealing kind of the white of the board. Okay? So there's various layers of different color values of color as I do that. Okay, a little passage of texture, and then let's try to get this to focus. There we go. Okay, let me see how close I can get here. Okay, there we go. See that? Okay, now what I'm going to do is really fun here. Okay, I'm going to take this, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this straight on, and say I'm just holding it up there, I'm doing a little spin like that, okay? And what that's going to do is I don't want to drill into the board completely, but I am drilling in and removing a little scoop of ink or surface when I do this, okay? And this is what people love to do too, and what I love doing too. You know how we add a little dot of white using the white gel pen. Well, this is kind of doing it too, but it's doing it in a removal process. See that? Like that. A little dot. See up here in the sky like that? Okay, this is representing little kind of sparkles in the water. Specular light. And if I do it up here in the sky, what that represents is stars up in that area. Okay. Let's see. I don't know what this will look like. Let's put a few into the snowy terrain. Maybe that's, you know, snow kind of shimmers, has a shimmer to it. Let's keep most of it kind of in a little area right here where that passage of light is coming through. Switching off to my sharp one again. Kind of want to go for a little bit more of a pronounced edge on some of these. Okay, now let me see something too. Okay, now we've added some more highlights in here. I'm going to grab a alcohol pen, brush marker, fine tip, and I'm going to go in and add some shadows in here. This is a very light color of blue. This is a Marby La Plume Permanent, and this is GB693. I have no idea what color that is. When as far as my usage of this goes, when I say to myself it's a very light blue. And just kind of going around in here and kind of creating a little bit more of a designation between the snow and the creek in some areas. That might be, well, let's see. I'm trying to think if this will add into the shadows a little bit. I'm not sure if this is so light that it won't even kind of affect the overall. I think what I need to do is I need to go a little bit darker. I'm searching through some pens here. These blues right here. Ooh, that's really dark. That's pretty dark too, navy. They're all pretty dark. Oh, let me try that first one. Oh, here actually. Okay, that's better. B717. Oh, it's really dark. I think it stands out like that because it's wet though, so kind of going in there and I kind of want to give some weight and, like I say in other videos, kind of visual opacity by kind of adding the shadows next to objects. Okay, that's going on with the darker one. Let's go back to kind of that lighter one again, and let's kind of blend that out a little bit. Okay. It looked fairly dark when I added it in there, but I noticed kind of when it dried lighter, so I don't need to worry about it really too much. Okay. Anyways, kind of a fun little scene. I was trying to think if I wanted to scratch a little star back in there. Maybe I will. Okay, this is where everyone kind of in my class has always kind of needed help. What I do is if I'm doing a little twinkly little star, what I'm going for is something like, like this, and kind of that look, but reversed out, of course. The thing is, you don't want these edges to be just like that, right? That wouldn't look right. So you want it to kind of, taper off like that, like in that mark. So the way you do that is, there's probably different ways you can do it, but let's say that little dot right there is where I'm going to start this. It's not going to have a full star in there because there's not very much space there. Okay, it's going to be that one. But I just turn my tile for the direction of that stroke, and I might not get it in one stroke, but so I've kind of, scratched away one line. Looks like a comet right now, huh? Could leave it like that, and that would look okay. But I'm always starting in the center there, and I'm going with the light touch too. I'm not scratching real hard, okay? So there's kind of two arms going up. Always starting in the center. Going down. Okay, now what I have now is that kind of crosshair right there. Now we just need the secondary ones. Start in the center. Okay. One, two, three, four, and 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. And we have our little star effect. Just kind of the subject matter we need, right? It's small and subtle, but kind of effective. Your eye probably goes right to it. It's because there's not a ton of them everywhere in here. You could kind of sparkle, do one of the little twinkles in the water as a sparkle, like you're looking at it through a star filter or something like that. Might be kind of neat. That star almost becomes the light source in a scene, doesn't it? Because, you know, your eye kind of goes right to it. That being said, I think I'm going to do that. I'm going to have that star as my light source in the scene, so there's a more kind of definitive object as far as source of light. Would a star be giving off this much light? No. But since it's the star, in terms of the focal point of a scene, I'm going to make it cast, you know, the light accordingly. Trying to make the scene a little bit more exciting here. Maybe the trees closest to the, you know, the star in the scene will be a little bit more illuminated with light. Okay. That looks a little bit better, huh? That tree kind of gets lost. Let's throw a little bit more light on it. Alright. These tiles look really good when you spray them too. The clay surface gives it kind of a muted look, you know, in terms of the absorbency. So what you can do is you can spray it and the saturations will become more distinct, and it looks good too, having that kind of shiny surface on there. And I think what I'll do is I'll spray this and I'll mat it up onto a card, and that'll be the composition. So a lot of variation that happened on this simple, you know, composition, just through the use of kind of scratched marks. Hope you enjoyed watching the Stampbord kind of wintry seasonal scene here. Fiber brush, scratch knives of 2 different types, and the ATC Stampbord clay-coated tile or board. Thanks for watching.